Hello, I am surrounded by 5 fish tanks. The roosters are crowing just like they are all day long, but it's an early morning, and today's episode, number 2, I titled with the violent image, The Battle Inside You. So let's get to it. Hello and welcome back to How to Be Human. In this episode, I am going to start by reminding everyone about how basic DNA mutations happen and the basics of evolution, so you will be on track to understand the core ideas of this book. If we don't know what something is, how can we possibly make it work right? And this includes us. How to Be Human is a philosophy and book series as essential as understanding the world is not flat. I urge you to take the stuff and use this system to update the way you see life. With our reassessment of what humans have learned in the last 100 years, daily choices must not be left up to guesses as they largely were in the past. You will not learn this in school and not acquire it from your parents or anyone else, for the most part. Only after years of pondering have I connected the right dots. Through creative thinking, I have tracked down our typical behavior back to its source. One of the core breakthroughs is, inside of us, we still have behaviors that developed in creatures millions and even billions of years ago, and our more recent evolutions must fight the old ones for dominance. To get to the heart of what we are, we need to think about DNA. So before getting to my ideas, here's a little review of how genetic mutations of DNA happen. When creatures mate, their offspring get a mix of traits from both parents. The DNA program does not change in this process. The genetic code can only change via mutation when radiation or chemicals damage it, or when rare mistakes happen when DNA is replicated in the growing of new cells. So let's go over that one more time. When creatures mate and have babies, the genes only get mixed up, and dominant traits like brown eyes usually override recessive genes like blue eyes or something like that. And there's all kinds of exceptions in nature, but that's the general rule. And radiation can be from ultraviolet rays or even harsher rays from the sun, and chemicals like remember that three-eyed fish from The Simpsons? It's getting nuclear radiation from Homer's power plant. So it's it's a cartoon, but its DNA would have been changed because of the radiation. The DNA is actually damaged. And so then when it goes through a process of mitosis, and just kind of like when creatures breed, the DNA unwinds because it's spiraled around itself. There's 2 strands of chromosomes, and it unwinds. So it goes in 2 different directions, and each half kind of becomes part of a new cell, and eventually that replicates in a copying process, and then you have 2 cells. And it's successful every so million number of times it does that, but every once in a while there's a mistake. A gene might be out of place, or something might be just plain wrong. It's kind of like in old times when monks were transcribing a Bible, or people were transcribing a book like the Iliad, and a lot of them weren't that literate, and they would make a lot of mistakes. It's kind of the same thing with our genes. Okay? So that is how differences in the copying process happens, and how evolution happens when a lucky chance comes up and the change is a good one for the animal or plant or whatever it is. And why review this? Because these changes are what made us. If we want to know how to do well in life, we need to know what we are. To do otherwise is like trying to fix your car by popping vitamins in the fuel tank. In the ultra-rare occurrence that one of these changes to DNA adds a benefit to a creature, maybe the trait that came about will be spread to others of its kind through breeding. So even though it had a really beneficial change happen to its DNA, and it would be of help to the population, that doesn't mean that it will happen. It's just like, did these animals have sex or not? It's just up to that. It comes down to very basic things. Maybe the change makes other animals think it's a weird animal. Maybe it's the first change towards what would become a new species looks like a freak. I don't know. It could be anything like that. If the change is truly useful, maybe the beings who have it will outlive other species and carry the torch through the generations. If they survive over the thousands and millions of years, chances are more mutations will have happened, and these living beings will be different from the ones who carried the earlier changes. So now they're a compound of lots of mutations if they're successful. Chances are those mistakes happened, that damage happened because of sunlight or something that affected the DNA. Chances are that happened throughout time. So to say that we are human is only partially true, because we're part of all these other animals. We are a mishmash of traits that were originally in microorganisms, ancient reptiles, and all the forms the totality of traits combined to make, all the way up to our time. Now I will briefly transition to the topic of being limited by how we think of the names of things. So here's transitioning into a new subject. This book, the different ideas work as a system, so you'll see that I can transition into a new topic, but they're all related as a web of a system. Alright, so we must be careful to not think a thing is merely its name, whether that be a human being or even an object such as a chair. We call a chair only for vocal convenience and because the general shape suits the human body. To a cat, a chair is a hard bed, a platform to better observe from, or a way to reach the higher surface of a table. The concept of a chair is not the same for cats, and the object is only a sum of its parts anyway. It is only a material such as wood or metal that can be in various configurations, as long as it enables a person to sit. A wood chair is only chopped portions of trees, in reality. If we call reality something we can point to as something that cannot be broken down further, only the smallest particles, not even protons, not even atoms, are a thing, but a sum of components. Therefore, a chair is not a chair, and wood is only another combination of smaller parts. So that's breaking down that We have names for things, but deep down it's only the particles. And maybe wood has an element to it that when all the parts are together, it's unique. I'm just equating that to what we are. We call ourselves human, but nature may not. If nature had a personality and mind, it may not call us that, because all we are a combination of things. There's infinite combinations if you really look at it. Here's a weird question. What do a human and a cake have in common? We are both combinations of things that, when working in unison, have a unique use or ability. Leave a core ingredient out of a cake, and it may cease to please our taste. A human certainly has abilities that its evolutionary predecessors lacked, though we carry much of what they had. Think of a cake made from a recipe that could suffice, but not blow our minds. We are like that cake with extra additions, say, of fresh fruit and chocolate, that elevate it and bring joy via the taste buds. So I'm just equating, say, a cake lacking sugar or lacking salt, and it's like, something's wrong with this. If we were born with a birth defect, right, we'd be lacking something that most humans have, and that might be equated to the cake. I'm also equating it to a related, similar kind of animal, but a human has extra abilities in its brain of various sorts, and the opposable thumb. And that little addition gives us a big advantage. We are unique, but we're not completely different. We are part of nature. We are just a lot of exactly what those animals are, piece by piece, and then some extra additions and changes. We are not separate from the life forms that were made up of core components that we have. We are them, plus certain changes and additions. Scientists refer to the rudimentary parts of the brain that regulate unconscious programs such as heartbeat and knee-jerk, near-automatic reactions to things as the reptile brain. This part of the brain is more primitive than areas related to things like emotion, and parts related to emotion are still more primitive than areas that developed later in time that only humans and other advanced creatures have. These very different parts being stuffed into one complex organ causes the various parts of the brain to sometimes all rise up when circumstances in life happen. This is an instance when a person's understanding of their brain and what they are can be of use. They can hold back the mindless panic, hold back the emotion of rage, and seat theirself firmly in the more appropriately human parts of the brain and deal with the circumstance in an intelligent, controlled way. This is one focus of this book series. Understanding clearly where various ideas, feelings, and impulses to act are coming from. Perhaps a person is a bit manic, or has an overabundance of anger or depressive feelings. The logical parts of us are a danger here too, because they cause us to point blame outside ourselves, when it is only partially true or not at all. If the problem originates from inside you, you can work on it. You can restrain it from having a negative effect on others and deal with what is really going on in the circumstances outside you. Overcoming irrational and destructive impulses within us is a concrete example of us gaining control over our animal self, a way of behavior prescribed by innumerable religions and philosophical traditions throughout history. This is the unifying link that unites the goals of both the religious and non-religious. In ancient times, certain people prescribed to the uneducated, illiterate masses a watered-down version of this. The information was transferred through the filters of the various cultures and had to be explained in simple terms. This, and the desire to control the masses, is why so much was taught in simplistic terms, similar to the speech one uses when disciplining a child. This and that was said to be bad, rather than having many debatable aspects. Today we are capable of understanding much more, so let's allow ourselves to get to the heart of these issues. The animal nature of some of these ancient sages were The animal nature some of these ancient sages were noticing are aspects of our behavior that actually were present in various animals that came before us. We are in a better place now to step up to this goal. We are in a better place now to thrust off the idolatry of religious clutter. The idea of a God itself isn't ridiculous, but the packages they are presented in the form of religions, spoil the idea for many. It is this topic of God and religion that I begin with in the next episode, Pure Belief. Thank you.